speaker is Shweta Katti, UN Youth Courage Award winner and change maker. Shweta grew up and studied in Kamathipura, Asia's most infamous red light area in the city of Mumbai. She joined an NGO called Kranti in 2012. And Kranti works to empower girls like her from Mumbai's red light area. When she was 18, Shweta became the first girl from an Indian red light area to go abroad to study. Shweta is here to talk about kindness within the sex worker community. Shweta, over to you.
Thank you, Suresh, for the introduction. And I'm grateful for the opportunity, and I'm very looking forward to the conversation today. And may this conversation bring and open your heart towards the lesser known of our society. Yeah. So I would like to begin with an activity which we would be doing on our own. I will take you through a situation and I would like to imagine that. I would like you to imagine it, and we'll have to make a certain decisions on our way. So let's begin the journey. You'll have to step into someone's shoes. So please be open. Forget about all the privileges that you have today right now with all your name or family or finances. And for a moment, step into the person that we're going to talk about. So if you can, please close your eyes. And imagine you are a 13-year-old girl from an Indian village who never went to school. At age 13, you're married to a 35-year-old man who already has a wife. He is an alcoholic, unemployed. By age of 16, you have 2 children and you start doing domestic work to feed your husband. But it is not enough money. So your husband plans to send you to the city, promising that domestic work will pay you twice as much in the city and you will live happily. But when you reach the city, he sends you to a brothel and leaves the 2 children with you. You can open your eyes. And now there are going to be certain situations that you will go through as this girl. So after 6 months, you have the opportunity to run away from this brothel and take your kids. You can run away to another brothel and earn $100, 6,000 to 7,000 rupees a month. Or go do a domestic work for 50 a month, 3,000, 4,000 rupees a month. So the decision is yours. Do you want to leave the brothel and go do a domestic work, or go into another brothel? So make a mental note for yourself, the kind of decision that you will make if you were in this situation. Take a couple of moments, because this is not easy as it seems. Really check what's going on in your mind if you are in this situation, and be fair to the choice that you make. So I give you a moment. So I hope you've made your decision. So we move on. For those of you who chose domestic work, you work there for 3 months, and the man who pays you starts abusing you, refusing to pay unless you have sex with him. And it may sound too extreme, but this happens. So again, you have a choice to make. Do you run away from the domestic job and go back to sex work? Or do you run away to another domestic job? The choice is yours. Take a moment and really think about it. What would you do? Also remember, you have 2 children with you. Now you're 17. You become very sick, and hospital tests show you HIV. you get your children tested. And it turns out both your children are HIV positive too. You have to now look after your own medicine and also your children's education and healthcare. For those still doing domestic work at another home, your second employer starts abusing you after 6 months at the new job. Your costs for your children and your own healthcare are approximately $90 a month, so 5,000 rupees. But you only make $50 a month, which is around 3,000 rupees in a domestic job. So again, we have a decision to make. Do you still want to continue in domestic work for $50 a month? Or if you want to become a sex worker for $100 a month? I'll give you a moment to think about it. For those of you in sex work, you learn about an NGO that keeps children of sex workers and provides shelter, education, and healthcare. And this option is only for the sex workers, the one who chose to go back to brothel and do sex work. And this is the toughest decisions of all. If you want to send your children to the NGO or to keep them with you. So I would like to talk about the red light community of Bombay, which is called Kamathipura, which is where I grew up. I grew up in a small brothel in Bombay. And this activity didn't really have a conclusion. It doesn't have a happy ending or a good ending, but really the kind of decisions a girl, not even a woman, a girl has to make when she has been trafficked and when she has to go through all these decisions. I remember when I was in school, my friends would ask me, because I went to school right next to, not within the red light community, it was just like a couple of minutes away from the red light community, where my other friends came from the normal, they were still poor, but they came from more moral families than of mine. And they would always ask me, why do they do sex work? Why don't they do other work? And I guess these are the questions that everyone who's not very familiar with the red light district or life of sex workers asks. And I understand, because of course you do not know the kind of decisions a girl has to make while she's on this journey. But I hope it gave you a little glimpse, because it's nothing compared to what she really has to go through, but a little glimpse of the kind of decisions she has to face. And so I wanted to talk about the kindness within my community, because I've seen many Bollywood movies, many media portrayals of red light district and of sex workers, and they are extremely misappropriated and very different than actual reality. Yes, there is violence and abuse within the community. But tell me a single neighborhood which does not have that. If you can give me one, you win. But I bet you do not have a community which does not have these issues within them. But often, the media or the powerful voices forget to also emphasize or even bring even a slight light within the life within the red light district. It's not really all sad. Yes, there is difficulties, there are many struggles, and they're much more than a normal community. Of course there is. But there is love and kindness all over and within it. When people think about a red light district and a sex worker, they think about being immoral. They often have the disgust on their face. But when I think about a red light district or a sex worker, I think about mothers, because that's where I grew up. So let me tell you my story. My grandmother was married to a man in a red light community. She was not a sex worker, but he was an alcoholic and a drug addict. So he passed away, left her with nothing. So she had to start working as a domestic worker in a brothel. and she was pregnant while when he died. So she also had a daughter. So she raised my mother within a brothel as well, and she would work in different brothels. That's how we ended up in the red light community. My mother also grew up there, and certain years of her life she was in a village, but then she came back in the red light community to live there. She was forced into the sex work once, but she registered and she started working as a factory worker. And she had me when she was 21. At some point, our grandmother passed away and she was left alone. And my stepfather had joined. I have two other sisters who are from him. And he came to live with us. And we lived in a brothel. So we lived in a loft above a brothel. It's a small loft. Every night I was afraid to come back home because there was so much violence by my father, by stepfather. He was an alcoholic. He was violent verbally and physically to my mother and to us as well. But it was the women who work in the brothel, the sex workers, who would always come to rescue, who would always come and tell my father away, make sure that we are taken to a safe place while my mother and father are arguing, stand up right next to my mother all along, while if my father is being physically abusive, they would stop him. And it was because of the sex workers my family really survived. My mother was very young when she started working in a factory, and she already had 3 children. And she had to go early in the morning to the factory around 8:30 and come back 7 in the evening. It was a woman called Amma who was trafficked from Nepal, but she raised 2 of my sisters, Shraddha and Ashi. They're more her daughters than my mother's, because literally she bathed them. She made sure they were sent to school. And it was not only the sex workers, it was also men who came as vendors in the community. My youngest sister hated going to school as a child. He would leave his basket of goods that he came to sell next to the brothel, and he would carry her to the school and make sure that she's reached there safely. And who does that? And nobody would expect this to happen in a red light district, but this happens. The acts of kindness are done every single day. I hated going to school as a child, but there was a woman, a sex worker called Radha. And I remember her. She was very beautiful. I always looked up to her. She was very kind and peaceful. I told her how much I hated going to school. But she kept telling me how it's very important to go to school because that is where my freedom lies. She pushed me. Often people think sex workers force other women to get into sex work. Well, that may be true for some people, but that's not true for everyone. So because of the kindness of the women, I survived. Because of the kindness of the women, we lived through every single day. I would like you to open your minds and open your hearts and really think all the misperceptions that we have towards communities, and not only to the red light district, but to all the communities that are not very mainstream in the society today. What are these mindsets that are stopping us to open our hearts to them? Do we really know their story? We jump very quickly to judge. We jump very quickly to discriminate. But do we take a moment to challenge these mindsets that are often conditioned by media portrayals, movies, and a lot of only a one-sided narrative, and not often explored the narrative of the side of the community, of the people that we are actually talking about. So I invite you to open your heart towards the people you think you've had inhibitions towards. and hope that you learn more about them. Yeah. That is all I have to say.
Thank you, Shweta. That was a very moving story told in a very beautiful way. The people in your community, in the Kamathipura community, have had to make decisions that somebody like me has to never even think about. I've never even thought about this decision. And thank you for making us think about this.
Thank you.
Shweta, there's a lot of debate on whether sex work should be legalized. Will legalization help in any way?
Yes. I think for me, it's often the people whom it's about are left out. Do we ever ask the sex workers what they want? It's people who are elite and scholarly. They think that they know what to do. But I think we should really try to understand why it's important, because many of these women have worked in this industry and now that it's become their work and that's how they survive. I know many of the women who've tried to get jobs outside, try to survive, but the decisions that you had to make today, they're real. They get abused, they get discriminated constantly, and there is no open space. And I really feel it's a personal choice, and it should be a choice. It shouldn't be this or that. Of course, I'm against trafficking. That is immoral and that shouldn't be done, of course. But I think it's a woman's or man's choice. I think they are both. I think both. It's their choice that they make if they want to do it or not. And I think that should be open. That's how I feel.
Okay. So speaking on behalf of the sex worker community, what do they want from society? Do they want legalization? Do they want more protection? Do they want legitimization of sex work?
Yeah, I think more than anything, they just want to live peacefully and respectfully. And the fact that they were victimized because of lack of our education, awareness, and support system, because of poverty, they had to make certain choices. They were left vulnerable, and now they're here. And even here, they're not protected. They should be protected. They're violated by the police. I remember as a child, I grew up and we would have the police van come into the community with like lathis, and the women would get their nighties on and run into the so-called better community, so they don't come finding them there. And what they would do, they would catch the sex workers, take them into the jail, sexually abuse them, put them into a case that they're not part of. As I would overhear these conversations as a child. So you're victimizing even more, and it hasn't worked thus far, so I don't think it will work anymore. And I think when you give charge to women, I mean, look what women can do in today's society. So I think if there are any stronger women than sex work, like if there are any stronger women, then it's sex workers, because they've lived through the toughest choices and they are still living through them. So I think all they want and all we want is from the community is integrity, and to be respected and to be treated as equally, no matter what choices we make as a professional. Yeah.
Let's talk about portrayal in the movies. Is there any movie or book or TV show that's done a good job of portraying the life of a sex worker or life in Kamathipura? Has anybody done a good job? We know the parodies and we know all the cliches they use.
Yeah, I think there was Chandni Bar I really liked. It was very. I watched it. I haven't watched it for years, but I think it touched the community. It wasn't so glamour, trying to make it glamorous or exotic in a way. Sometimes you see, I remember, I think Chameli, Kareena Kapoor was dressed up in all this fancy, and I'm just like, my God, I'm really trying hard to be, to portray this misperception, which doesn't even, speak to reality anyway. But Chandni Bar was certain. I think in that movie, they really explored the certain choices a woman has to make when she's into, and I think that really touched my heart.
Right. That's a good note. I'm going to watch Chandni Bar again today after today's
Oh, for sure. I think it's a good movie.
So Nabila Jogi says, do you She's a member of the audience. She says, Shweta, you are an amazing and beautiful woman. So proud of you. Not a question,
Thank you.
comment from Nabila.
Thank you.
Sia asks, how did you find out about Kranti? I'm going to add a question to Sia's question. Tell us a little bit about your work at Kranti. What do you do?
Oh, yeah. So Kranti is an organization which empowers the girls from the red light district to become agents of social change. It's a shelter home. It's based in Bombay. And I was in my 11th or 12th grade. I studied most of my life in Marathi, so I knew very little English back then. And after 10th, you have to go to college, which is in English. So in 10th and 11th, and since I was bullied in school, I was very scared of going into a classroom, especially now a new one with foreign students, not like foreign students, but like even the students I didn't know. So I was a bit scared. So I wouldn't go into the school at the classes. Not that I didn't want to study. I would go to college, but just didn't have the courage to go in because I was so scared. So when I was in 12th, I got my world was shaking because I knew my stepfather was still alive. So I knew the kind of life I would have had to end up living if I had not succeeded educationally. So I reached out to there's one of the other organizations that works in the community called Apne Aap Women's Collective. So they put me in touch with Kranti. They told me, because I told them I need some place where I can really study. 12th was a very big deal. And that's how I got in touch with Kranti, and a whole new world opened up to me. And really, actually, many of the misperceptions, I even looked at my community negatively. So I do not blame you if you look at it as well, because it's conditioning. I was also conditioned. It was only at Kranti I really opened up to who we really are, to the aspects of love and care that my community really gave me, the joy of food, the joy of culture. We are people from Nepal, Bangladesh, south of India, and you can only see how vibrant this community can get. And yeah, so I'm really grateful for Kranti. Please do look it up.
We will. Let's talk about going abroad. Going abroad for most of us, the first day is a massive culture shock when you land in a foreign country. So tell us about your first day in a foreign country.
Oh man, I had no idea. This life has taken me by surprise for sure, and I've been so grateful because when I ended up, as a child, I would daydream a lot because I wanted to escape my reality. So I would always daydream of these big dreams of ending up in a foreign country. Although I didn't know what America was, I wanted to. I mean, what you watch Bollywood movies and you have like all these fantasies. So when I came to Kranti and Robin is the co-founder, and she really inspired me. And she said, oh, maybe after 12th, I had such less marks because I ended up reading Harry Potter books than actually studying. And she said, maybe we can, and I wouldn't get into good enough university in India. I mean, it's a very difficult situation, especially coming from a non-English background and not very open, the schools, the colleges in India. So she's American, but she was from America, so she knew the system. So she said, yeah, so let's go, let's explore. And so I got super excited. But then my flight there, I mean, there were a lot of obstacles before it, so I didn't know it would happen. But when it happened, I was just like looking, I was sitting in my seat, and you see this map, right, on your screen. And I was just like, my God, where am I going? I just had this bit of anxiety. And I remember I met with people who had volunteered at Kranti, so I knew them already. So some of the two people who I was very close to. So I was so joyful and so happy. And to be in a foreign country, a whole different world opened up to me. College was struggle, but I think it added an aspect to me that has given me a lot of, like, opened my world view in a way that I wouldn't have imagined before. It was scary though, for a long time.
Scary and fun at the same time.
Yes.
Tanya says, Shweta, you're an amazing, strong girl, so encouraging in your conversation. Love and blessings to you. You're getting a lot of love and blessings from many members of the audience.
Thank you so much for coming and listening. This means a lot, that you have an open heart to already be willing to hear the stories of other people. So please keep on doing that. Keep on being good.
And Rochna from Chlorophyll asks, Shweta, what is your dream for your life?
I want to come back to my community and live there with women and work with them. That is my and if I can make that happen, I'm the happiest in this world. Yeah.
Sucheta asks, are there any people who get into sex work voluntarily, or is it all trafficking?
No, I think
Of course.
some people do get voluntarily. My aunt, my mother had brought her from the village because she got into trouble back in the village. So when she was asked, my mom told her to work in the factory, but she was approached by someone else to do sex work, so she decided to do sex work. So often this misperception between that sex work is only forced, that is completely wrong.
Kubeshini asks, what are the basic health needs of sex workers?
Everything. The health care situation is horrible, especially in the public hospitals, like really bad. Especially if you're a sex worker, you're looked at as an untouchable. And especially during COVID, they experienced a lot of hostility from people from the neighborhood because of course when you think about sex work, you think about sex, and then you think HIV and all the diseases, and then they discriminate you more and push you further along the margins, because even during COVID they hadn't the community really pushed them away because of the stigma, because of the misperceptions of. And but there are some clinics which I think there are some doctors who are working in the community. Of course they're doing it for their profit, but I think they're also kind. And I do really appreciate them because I've interacted with them and I don't see that hostility in that way. So they are good people for sure, but I think we can do much better for sure. Yep.
All right, Shweta, we're at the end of our session. We have some more questions. We'll mail you the other questions that are coming in to us, and you can answer them at your own leisure. But I'd like to thank you on behalf of the International Kindness Festival and personally as well. In the last half an hour, you've opened our eyes to a world that we've heard about, but we've only seen in movies or read about in books or we've heard about from other people. You opened our eyes to the kindness in the sex worker community. And most importantly, you made us think about what we would do, what decisions we would make if we were put in that circumstance. And that is truly amazing. Thank you, Shweta. And we wish you
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Have a good day and the rest of the event.
You too.